Hello, everyone, and welcome to the DM show. And hello, Martin. How are you?
Good, good. Hi, Deirdre, and hi, everyone. Welcome. We've got a really great show actually to end this season. Now, we are coming back in the fall. This isn't the end of the DM show, but this is a wrap up for the season because we're going to take some time off in the summer, as we hope all of you can do. Any plans, Deirdre?
Just going to relax. I don't travel until September. So I think it's going to be when I take a little time off, day trips, pool time, and then catching up on a lot of good books. How about
Oh,
you, Martin?
that's really great. We've rented a cottage on a lake for a week in July, or August. I'm really looking forward to that. Other than that, I've been traveling. I was away in Europe with my wife for a couple weeks, and that was just great. So I feel like I've already had my vacation, but I am ready for something else.
So good. So I've been excited about this session. I mean, talking about stepping out of your comfort zone,
Cottage
fears.
on a lake. Sorry about that. July,
No
so
worries.
for August, I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah.
My bad. It's my second screen that the volume was turned up. I thought it was turned down. Sorry about that. So everyone heard, that we are actually live. Sorry, go
Yes,
ahead.
these things happen in real time. Well, anyway, change, fear, comfort zone. Our guest today is going to share her model, Holly Jackson. And Martin, is there anything that we want to go over other than it's summer break and we're going to see everybody in September?
No, just in the chat, please introduce yourselves. Tell us where you're from. And any questions, just pop them in the chat and we'll try to get to them. And we have a few people who said hello. Nima, nice to see you. Patience, and Andy Donovan, who knows both of us. So hi, Andy. Welcome.
Hi, Andy. Excellent. Okay, let's tell everybody a little bit about Holly, who's joining us. Holly Jackson is a revenue and performance consultant. She's a speaker, a podcast host, and author, and she's the founder of Business Builder Throwdown. Everybody connect with Holly on LinkedIn because there's a lot about her, and certainly I don't have enough time to share it. So let me bring Holly in from the green room. Hi, Holly.
Hi, everyone.
Good to see you. All right. Well, how are you doing?
I'm great. I'm so excited to be here. And I was chuckling how we're kicking this off with imperfection, right? Like we're live and we could be in our heads about that, or we can face our fears head on and get past it and kick off the summer on the right foot.
Well, that's good to hear because honestly, imperfection, I think, is my middle name.
It could be mine
Or
too.
it feels
Embrace
like
that.
Yeah.
Hyphenated name. Well, Holly, you certainly know a lot about fear just based on watching your TED talk. I tell everybody to go and watch it. But maybe we could kick it off where you share a little bit how you learned about facing uncertainty.
Yeah, oh my goodness. My whole life has been such a roller coaster and such a windy path, which I'm sure a lot of viewers today can relate to. You think that you know where your North Star is when you're young, and sometimes that path is super windy and it changes. I remember when I started off, I was working a nonprofit and then kind of switched gears, worked in the corporate world. And in terms of uncertainty, my goodness, I had 4 layoffs as a top performer, receiving bonuses, contributing really amazing global programs. And I got really tired of that rat race. And at the same time, I had a lot of really serious health challenges. And I noticed that there was a pattern between both of these things. And I decided, hey, I want something better for myself. I want something different. This is not a fit for me. And I decided to start my own company. And of course, that's its own roller coaster, as I'm sure many viewers here today are entrepreneurs or you're in business development or sales and marketing. And my goodness, it is a windy roller coaster. And so there's the ebbs and flows there. So between health challenges, layoffs, and starting my own company, and also rock climbing, I have learned to deal with fear because it doesn't go away. We just learn how to have a better relationship with it.
It's really interesting what you're saying, Holly, about the windy path, because so many times when you're young, or even when you're not so young, you've got a goal and you think, okay, the goal is straight ahead. I'm just going to go there. But really, the goal might be in the distance, but the path is unpredictable and probably even more unpredictable these days, I think.
Yes, 100%. I remember when I started my career over 20 something years ago, thinking that it was going to be similar to my grandparents and my parents. Find a company, you work with them for 20 years, you retire. Those days are gone even in my generation. And I realized very quickly that it was more of a gig economy and was moving from contract to contract. And I had to learn that knowing how to navigate ambiguity, uncertainty is a really important skill as an entrepreneur, but also in the gig economy, which essentially is where we are today.
Yes. And as an entrepreneur, it doesn't stop. The navigating, the
No.
change,
No.
the fear you might face. And I find that you really have to trust yourself and listen to your brain, your heart, and your gut. Do you find that too, Holly?
Absolutely. Anytime I have not listened to my intuition or my gut or my heart, it has always got me in the foot. It's like, oh gosh, why didn't I listen to that? And actually, most recently, I was climbing with a climbing partner and they dropped me from 30 feet to the ground. And I could have let that affect me and not go back to climbing. But as soon as I assessed that I was physically okay, I decided to get right back on the wall because I knew that if I didn't, the psychological fear and the trauma there would remain and I would never get back to doing what I love. So it really is just learning how to put fear in the back seat and not let it drive the steering wheel of your life. It's there forever and it shows up in a lot of different ways that we can never predict.
Well, that's actually really good advice. I know, and this is something I think everyone is facing because of AI. One, there's all the just general fears about work now that uncertainty is compounded with all of the question marks about AI, what you need to learn, what you need to do for your job, all those things. And Holly, you've developed a fear model. So using the acronym FEAR, do you want to talk about it, but also the story behind how you created it? It's a great story.
Yeah, we'll start with the acronym and then we'll switch gears to the story so we don't scare people too quickly. Martin shared that watching my TED Talk scared him. So you're forewarned, you guys, this is not PG rated material. So the FEAR acronym I came up with actually from chapter 10 in my book, Inspiration Contagion. And that chapter 10 speaks to health challenges and navigating chronic pain. And I wanted to, for my TED Talk, create a simple methodology that applied to all challenges in life, whether it's business, health, any of the things. Because fear shows its, ugly face all the time in different ways. So F in the FEAR method stands for face it. There's nothing worse than when we don't actually acknowledge our fear because it grows and it festers and it becomes almost this nightmare that takes over everything in your life and it becomes dark and heavy. E stands for embrace curiosity. I have found that when I let fear take over and look at the negative side of it, it's really difficult to navigate. But when I'm curious about what fear can teach me, it's really opening me up to lessons and options and opportunities, which puts you in a totally different place of navigating your fear. The A in the FEAR method stands for advocate and activate. So you're getting a bonus here that was not able to fit into the TED Talk. Advocate for what you want and need through your community, through your business connections, through friends and family, and then activate the right mindset. So, what I mean by this is instead of focusing on the fear, focus on the opportunity, the growth, the lessons, the curiosity, and focus on where you want to go instead. And when we think that way, we're shifting to positivity and abundance versus lack and, being the victim. And then the R in the FEAR method stands for reach out. It's really scary to face your fears alone, but when you face them head on with your community, there's nothing we can't do together. So that's the FEAR method. Now, the story behind the FEAR method and how I came up with everything for the book, how I came up with the TED Talk, how it opens up. I decided to go backpacking in the woods alone. And honestly, you guys, I thought the scariest thing I would face was my own mental chatter and my own anxiety. But I was wrong. The third day of that trip, I took this trail and it was really lush woods. And I had been warned there was a mama bear out there with her baby cub. As I looked down, there were fresh paw prints on the ground and another smaller set. Even as I share this right now, I'm getting goosebumps yet again.
Me too. And I was there.
I'm feeling it.
Yeah. So you just realize you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. And you just hope and pray that you're not about to walk into Mama Bear. As I turned the next corner on the trail, I was not lucky or fortunate. And there, sure enough, was Mama Bear. She immediately began charging towards me, closing the distance between us on the trail. My life flashed before my eyes and time went slower. That really does happen when you're in these circumstances. And I remember thinking to myself that I hope it goes fast. I hope that this, I'm in a good place to go. I just wrote all these things. I'm forgiving. I have peace and clarity and harmony. And then I got really angry. I was like, I'm not here to die. I'm ready to live my life. And so some backpackers had shared with me how to charge a bear back because nothing was working with this bear. So I stood my ground, made myself big, and I took a step forward and I went, "Roar!" I'm saying that quieter so I don't scare you guys too bad. It was a lot louder than that in real life. And here's the thing. She stopped and paused for a moment, but she actually began charging me a second time. So you can imagine the persistence and the state of mind that would be required to stand your ground a second time of a bear charging and closing that space even further. As she charged me the second time, life flashed by my eyes once again. And I remember this time thinking, just make it fast. I don't want to be out here like missing limbs and taking days to go. And then I got angry again, stood my ground, and I charged her back once again. It probably sounded like two bears fighting in the woods. This time it actually worked, and she walked away. Now, the reason I share this story and the FEAR method is not because I predict or expect you to ever run into a bear like I did in the woods. This is very rare. It's not to scare you from backpacking. I still backpack alone. The reality is we all have bears in our life. We all have fears that keep us stuck. It could be a divorce. It could be changing your business. It could be starting your own business. But I'm here to tell you that regardless of what that bear or fear is, if I can charge a mama bear in the woods alone, that fear is not too big for you to charge head on.
That's powerful, Holly.
Yeah.
Brave. My goodness.
And the FEAR model.
Done.
And the FEAR model came out of it. So something, in addition to you surviving, which is great, you got something really productive that it sounds like changed your approach to work and life.
100%. I remember at the time back then I was a really avid road cyclist. And I remember I used to be afraid of crosswinds when I was on my bike. Like the crosswind would blow me into traffic or knock me over. And I remember my first bike ride after that experience. I'm like, you faced a freaking bear in the woods. The crosswinds is not going to take you out. You're fine. And honestly, I use the FEAR method all the time. I'm now more on the professional rock climbing side, really serious about multi-pitch climbing and lead climbing, which is dangerous. And I got to tell you, even the more you do it, you still face your fears all the time. And the first time I did multi-pitch climbing, I've never had to lean into the FEAR method more. I remember being up there by myself, waiting for my guide to lower me for the next pitch. And just all of the thoughts going through your head. And I'm like, Holly, you chose this. You want this. Enjoy it. So I faced it. And then I started, embracing curiosity. What are we learning from this? So I was literally going through the checklist on the multi-pitch.
Holly, is the model linear where you have to face it first and then embrace the curiosity and then it plays out? Or can you just jump to, let me reach out? I have a little fear.
Great question. I think it's not linear, except that in reality, you're kind of condensing the activities. You're facing it if you're reaching out, right?
Yes.
So
true.
technically the F part you kind of have to do, and you're not really acknowledging that it exists until you do any of the other steps. But outside of that, 100%, you can use any of them. And I think sometimes it's easier to reach out for support first to get to curiosity. But that's just easier how the acronym spelled itself in FEAR. So
No, it's excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Before we get to the next question, if any of our viewers have any questions, please add them in chat or any comments too. And I do want to give a shout out to Sumit, a former student of mine who just graduated. Congratulations, Sumit, and thanks for dropping by. We talked a little bit about generative AI and the fact that it really is pervasive, and yet none of us kind of know exactly how this is going to play out. So in what ways do you think generative AI fuels our fear, and how can we deal with that?
Yeah. Well, by the way, also for anybody here who's like, oh my gosh, how do I remember the FEAR method? We have a FEAR method one pager. So we have the link that we'll be sharing with all of you. And it has really a beautiful email campaign behind it to remind you and actions you can take to start leaning into managing your fear so that you're not just hearing about this once and it's once and done. We don't want you to be stuck. So that leads me into generative AI. A lot of people have so much fear around AI because it's new. And I put this in air quotes because I've been in technology before I started doing this work in this line of business. And AI has been around for a very long time, over 20 years. I remember training a team in India offshore for using AI on a mobile app for a wine company like 10 years ago. So the thing is, now it's more accessible to the mainstream, and it's got nice GUI interfaces so that people that are not technical coders can actually utilize and leverage AI. The reason there's a lot of fear around this is because there's not a lot of regulation around using it. So, like for example, one of my publishing partners was talking about how a lot of his authors will come to him and they've used AI and it's touched their book, and that's a problem because that can create copyright regulations and laws in the future. So that's just one case study, one example. And then there's of course a lot of fear for people on it being used unethically and also to get rid of people's jobs. And so we could have like a whole conversation for days and weeks around the ethicality of it and how it could be, getting rid of people's jobs. The one kind of silver lining I would say is AI is only as good as the human intervention behind it. And AI used correctly will allow you to help your team and your employees embrace their superhero genius skills and leverage them more to help your business grow in revenue and efficiency faster instead of having to do more administrative, tedious things. So if we use it correctly, it's great. But of course, there are going to be the bad guys, as there are in any industry, that use it incorrectly and unethically.
That's great. And we did share the link in the comments and also posted on the screen. So if anyone wants to get it, you can check it out in the comments.
So Holly, whether it's AI fueling fear or something else that's going on with your work or in your life, what are some strategies or tips that will help people out?
Yeah, well, again, I think tip number one is when you start feeling anxious, and that presents itself in different ways for people. Like for me, it's picking at my hand or getting a little OCD around things, or my shoulders start, coming up like earrings, or my breathing is really shallow. That means something has triggered you, and it's usually related to some sort of fear. And it might not be even conscious to you what that fear is. So that's why I face it as step one, because if we don't know what we're afraid of, how on earth are you going to do anything about that? So acknowledging and checking in with your biology, your body, your mental state is going to be helpful and essential right now. With all the things happening politically, economically, with technology, we're having so many different movements that are affecting humans in so many different ways that we really need to be hypersensitive and hyper aware of how we are feeling each day and protect our own individual energy and show up as the best version of ourselves. So one is checking in with yourself frequently and then getting yourself out of fight or flight. And that's kind of facing it and doing what you need to kind of reset. And then, of course, activating that right mindset, whether it's meditation or yoga or a hug from somebody you care about, or screaming into a pillow or running outside, whatever that is, getting back into that right state of flow and mindset, those two things are going to be essential moving forward.
I really like what you said about check in with yourself. I remind my clients all of the time that every day you just want to check in and say, how am I breathing? As simple as, am I breathing in my chest? Am I breathing in my belly? Is it my diaphragm? And the benefits that you get from that. Because at the end of the day, it's when you start saying, my shoulders hurt, my back hurts, that's just an indication of whatever was happening and all of those triggers playing out. And you just catch it so much sooner and apply the coping mechanisms that you just stated.
100%. Awareness and acknowledgement is number one of changing any habit. The same thing applies to our relationship with fear, our relationship to anxiety, because they're really highly interlinked. And right now, my goodness, I will tell you, I do consulting, but a lot of times I feel very much like a therapist because how business owners are affected with all the different fears, the speed of technology, all the things happening in the world. Of course, that's going to affect them personally. Of course, that's going to have specific implications for their anxieties and fears. And so the more we can manage that and feel seen and feel heard in our safe places, whether it's our business community or our family, the better we can show up.
That's great advice. And really checking in on yourself is a way to consciously just stop or slow things down and start to regain a little bit of self-control, to be able to step back and have a bit of perspective. We've got a really good question from Maggie, and I'm going to read it and then share it. And Maggie says, how do you balance your fear and still prioritize safety? Her fear is rooted typically in professional networking, and who isn't afraid of rejection. And as a job seeker, she finds herself deciding between a potential opportunity and safety because there's so many scammers out there, for example. She's already quieting her inner skeptic by staying open to new connection opportunities, but worries that she'll miss a cue and put herself at risk. So back to the beginning, how do you balance that fear and still prioritize safety?
I love this question so much. So I'll relate this to, it's similar to dating. And I got to tell y'all, dating in your 40s, just as unsafe and so many scammers out there. So the same thing goes for applying to a job, looking for leads in your business. It's all the same, right? How do I balance safety and fear? Well, the first thing is when I look at the fear and I acknowledge it, I can assess the risk, right? So, is there a legitimate risk here? Yes, there are potential scammers. There are potential guys I could go on a date with that have a former felony, believe it or not. Yeah, it's real. So, what can I do to mitigate that risk and safety? I can put plans in place. I cannot give them my phone number until I've met them in real life. Obviously, a little different than job seeking, but you can be careful the information you share with them until you realize that it's legitimate, right? So you're very careful on what information you provide until you test the legitimacy of it. And then, for example, if you're going on a first job interview or I'm going on a first date, you can have a safety plan in place to mitigate the risk. Hey, you can tell somebody, your family member, a friend, I'm going to this place at this time for this date or for this job interview. And by the way, if you don't hear from me by this hour, please check in with me. There are also apps where you can share your location with people so that you're constantly safe. So 100%. And listen to your intuition. If it feels scammy and slimy and your spidey sense is triggered, it probably is. So heighten the risk mitigation factor in the plan there when it feels that way. Now, of course, you also want to do the work on your belief system and your internal thinking, because if I believed every guy out there I wanted to go on a date with was a scam or had a felony, like what's the point of dating? And that's not the kind of energy you want to show up with for finding a job. So you want to check in with how you're feeling, how you're thinking, and we want to be in a state of abundance while also testing and checking in with our intuition to make sure it's aligned and it feels safe. And if it's ever off, that's just where you increase the risk mitigation plan in the background. Great question.
Excellent response. Good insights. And what do you think would stop somebody from wanting to step out of their comfort zone? Have you ever come across people who really want to step out, but yet they're so stuck, even though there's a fear model in front of them?
Yes. I'm laughing because even myself, like, first of all, I rock climb, and I have a rock climbing coach who pushes me out of my comfort zone every day. And so there are times where my brain, I'm like, do this, and my body's like, I'm not doing that move. And I'm like, okay, accepted. But that's also sometimes legitimate fear, because there are things when you're climbing where you could have serious injury or die. And right now, like, that's heightened because of falling and stuff. But yes, business owners, it's like simple things. Moving from a one-to-one call platform versus a group, a one-to-many platform, can feel really scary and uncomfortable. So when I have clients that struggle with things like that, we have to break it down. Because when people are in overwhelm, I like to call it that Oliver overwhelm. He is the villain of success, the villain of our joy. We want to turn to break it down Betty. She is our superhero, our superpower for getting rid of Oliver. So if you want to get out of overwhelm, you break it down. Okay, hey Joy, I see you're struggling with moving from one to many. What is so scary about that? And so she answers, and then I'll say, great. So we want to practice that first in a safe container. Could you have some friends show up in a practice model group call so that you can practice this, record it, send it to me, and we'll review how you did? Oh, okay, cool. Or if that's too much, why don't you do that in person with two of your closest friends? Or do it by yourself and pretend like Post-its on the wall are those people. And then, of course, once we break it down, we can figure out the small step for them for their comfort zone. Because here's the reality: you have your comfort zone, you have your stretch zone, and then you have death. And so in our human brains, we don't understand in society in modern times that it's not actually death. It's just very uncomfortable, and you might be embarrassed, right? Or you might look kind of silly on stage. You might flop and fail. The reality is the stretch zone has different layers to it and different levels to it. And for some people, that's the tiniest step feels like it's going to put them near the death edge. So we have to figure out for each person, what is that small step so we can get them growing. By the way, y'all, growth happens in your stretch zones, almost to the risk death zone, because that's where you grow.
I love it.
Yeah,
That is unbelievable. It makes it so it's less scary when you break it down that way, Holly.
Yep.
And it's great to see the progress.
I hate to say it, but we're almost at the end
Oh,
of the half
my
hour.
God.
So I'm going to
Okay.
just wrap up with our last question, which is, Holly, if you have any parting advice or additional words of wisdom that you want to share with our community. And I'm going to pop your link in again, just so everyone has it.
Yeah, I would say on the other side of your fears is freedom. What are you waiting for? Stop letting fear drive the steering wheel of your life. Face your fears head on. And you have a great community here to do this with, for accountability, for support. In fact, my challenge to each of you here today is on LinkedIn, post something that's out of your stretch zone, that's in your stretch zone that you're going to take action on today. Put a little hashtag of fear, tag us in it so that we can celebrate you and support you as you stretch into that stretch zone and you grow. So face your fears, you'll get freedom on the other side, and you have the FEAR method to support you.
That's great.
It is great. Stop letting fear drive the steering wheel.
Yep. Put it in the back seat.
Yes. In the rear view mirror.
Yep. It's always there, and it's there for a lot of good reasons, but I'll be like, cool, fear, I see you. I recognize that. This is the risk plan I have, but get in the back seat.
Good.
I like that.
Excellent. Oh my goodness. Well, I can't believe it. It's already 1:30. Holly, thank you very much for sharing about your own personal experience, your model, and all of the great insights. And thanks to everybody for tuning in. This was another really good episode of the DM Show. And we'll see you back in September.
Yeah, back in September. Have a great summer, everyone. And Holly, thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.